Today, let's see what are the components that are involved in a full stack application. Okay, let's start with the example of bookmyshow.com. So, you use bookmyshow.com where you have seats, okay, and some of those seats are empty and some of those seats are occupied. We see this data, we click on the data and we book the tickets. But how is the data actually stored with the bookmyshow? In the bookmyshow systems, this data is actually stored as a table. Okay, and table has rows and columns. Okay, so let's say it will have the data of seat, price, and VIP or not. So let's say seat number 1 price is 300 and it's not VIP. Then seat number 2, which is 500, it is VIP. Okay, let's say this is the data that is stored. So this is stored in database, and we see this data on a web browser. And now the full stack application journey that we are talking about, that journey is about how this data travels from the database to the web browser and vice versa. How the data that we have sent to the web browser goes back and sits in the database. So this is the whole journey of a full stack application. Okay, let's see how it works. First of all, here's our browser. Okay, what does browser understand? Browser understands HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Based on HTML, CSS and JavaScript, browser creates your web page. HTML, it gives you the structure. HTML gives you the structure. It gives what are the tags that should be present in the page. Then you have CSS. This gives you the style. And JavaScript gives the logic to the page. So logic means what happens when you click the button. Let's say when you click a button that should become selected, that logic happens with JavaScript. Okay, JavaScript gives the logic. Okay, so your obvious thinking will be that, okay, so the developers will start writing HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Technically that's correct, it is HTML, CSS, JavaScript, but developers don't write it. Developers write React code. Why do developers use React code instead of writing HTML, CSS, JavaScript directly? Because React has reusability. So let's say you have to write logic for how many theater has how many seats, something around 100, and then how many theaters do you have, something around thousands of theaters. So instead of writing code for each component individually, we use React makes the code reusable. So since the code becomes reusable, we developers don't have to write a lot of code. So there is this React code here. Okay, all good so far. We have written code in React, but how will web browser know? Web browser can only understand HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So then there is a transpiler, or we can just say a translator that translates React code to HTML, CSS, JavaScript. That's called Babel. Okay, so now from React to HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and from HTML, CSS, JavaScript to the output that you see on your web browser. Okay, the journey this far is clear. But how will React know about the seats and their information, about the seats and its information? How will React understand which seat is VIP and which seat is not VIP, or what is the price of the seat? How will React know this data? React needs a JSON file for that. React understands JSON, and it needs a JSON file for that. So React reads the JSON file and creates this data for us. Okay, now React needs JSON. What is JSON? JSON is a text file, but the data in this text file is stored as list of objects. So nothing but there would be a list, and then there will be objects like seat and its value seat1, and then seat1, and then what's next? Price. So these are key value pairs. So text JSON is nothing but a text file that has list of objects in key value pairs format. Price 300, and then VIP, which is true or false. True or false. So this is the information that is stored in JSON. Right. Okay. So far so good. So React reads this JSON file, and then Babel translates it to HTML, and then you see it in your browser. Okay, but how is this JSON file created? Okay, because our source data is still in a database, which is in rows and columns, which is in a tabular format. How is this JSON created? Here comes the API. So what does API do? So we generally use one of the API creation tool that we use is Django REST framework. Okay, this is one of the API creation tools that we use, Django REST framework. What it does is it takes Python objects. Python objects means instances of classes, instances of a class which are called objects. In this, what it does is it takes Python objects and converts those objects to JSON file. So how does Python object look? Let's say there is a class called seat, and seat class will have ID, and it will have attribute called price, and it will have an attribute called VIP, whether it is true or not. So these class objects, so this is a seat is a class and this is an object. Then there are list of objects, such objects, and which is then translated to JSON by Django REST framework by using something called as serializers. So what does serializer do? Serializer takes Python objects and converts it into JSON data, and vice versa. And when there is a request back from the web browser, it takes the JSON data and converts it to Python objects. Okay, this is good, looks good, but our data, this is still not the data that we have in the database. The data in the database is still in form of a table, rows and columns. What do we have here? We have objects. We don't have rows and columns yet. So how do we get this rows? How do we get these objects from these rows and columns? So this is where Django provides us ORM. Okay, Django ORM, Object Relational Modeler. What Django ORM does is Django ORM takes data from the table, the rows and columns, and converts it into Python objects, and it takes Python objects and converts it into table format by using models. So we give the model of, so let's say this is a table, right? This table can also be represented as a class. So that how can this table be represented as a class? We provide Django with the class representation in models, and once we represent it as a class, Django ORM takes this class and creates a table for us. Okay, so what does it do? Here ORM Python objects to rows and columns, table rows and columns, and vice versa. From table data to Python objects, from table data to Python objects to table data. That is the work of object relational modeler. Sorry. Okay, so this is how the journey completes. So let's see, let's count one by one. Let's recap it. So first of all, we have browser needs HTML CSS JavaScript. That HTML CSS JavaScript is provided by Babel needs React code. That React code is written by the developers in React, and React needs data in form of Json. That Json is provided by the serializers. Serializers need Python objects. Those Python objects are provided by Django ORM. ORM needs rows and columns, and those rows and columns are provided by the database. So this is how the full stack application journey happens.